All right, really quick, if there was ever a Tale Foundry video you actually paused to read the content warnings on, let it be this one. This is a video about cannibalism. It is exactly as gnarly as it sounds. You've been warned. One of the most shocking, grotesque, surprisingly funny pieces of literature I've ever read is an 18th century pamphlet about meat. It's called A Modest Proposal. You may have heard of it. A Modest Proposal is a sick little piece of satire. It imagines a whole industry built around cannibalism. Not just any cannibalism, mind you, the mass consumption of human babies. Helpfully, the narrator lays out a meticulous plan detailing how exactly this would all work. There are whole paragraphs about how to farm children, descriptions of every possible way you could cook and eat them. Impoverished parents would raise their children like livestock, fattening them up to be eaten by the rich. A young, healthy child, the narrator notes, would be delicious when stewed, roasted, baked, or boiled. On special occasions, a whole roast child would make the perfect centerpiece to feed the whole community. By selling their children to be eaten, the narrator claims, Ireland's poor could finally make themselves useful. The writer of this piece, Jonathan Swift, is, as you can see, a master of satire. And this is perhaps his best-known piece. It is also almost unbelievably direct. So hideous, so absurd that it flies almost straight past the realm of horror and into that of comedy. You can't deny this idea of an industrialized cannibalism is, if nothing else, effective. So effective, in fact, you see it in all kinds of media, even today. In the game Little Nightmares, you get to watch children be processed into meat and devoured by grotesque, monstrous adults. In the movie Daybreakers, a post-human society of vampires farm humans for their blood. The movie Soylent Green, you already know the twist. That stuff everyone is eating? It's made of people. The idea of an entire cannibalism industry is so ridiculous, so hyperbolic, it's hard to read as anything but satire. Undoubtedly horrifying, utterly unbelievable. People just wouldn't get on board with something so taboo, so repulsive. Sure, you'll always have your Ed Geins and Hannibal Lecters, but it would never be allowed to expand into an entire industry. Humans would just never be able to stomach cannibalism like that. Right? Really quick, before the video starts, I just want to tell you about Tale Foundry behind the machines. There is a lot that goes into making this show, and a lot you will probably never see. But our humans, bit by bit, have started to share that process. Sometimes they'll stream their research, long before a video ever makes it into the pipeline. Sometimes they'll make forum posts, brainstorming an idea. Thumbnails are one of the funnest things to work on here, and they do a lot of that too. And sometimes they'll just hang out and play games and stuff. It's all right there in our Discord server, available to anyone who supports Tale Foundry anywhere. You could become a YouTube member, you could join our Patreon community, you could even subscribe right in Discord itself. All of them cost exactly the same amount and will get you access to anything and everything behind the machines. Tale Foundry has always been about more than just video content. We make these videos to inspire and to be inspired. A big thanks to everyone who joins us in that process. We couldn't make this show without you. Okay, thanks so much for listening. Now, on to the video. I mentioned Soylent Green. That's one movie I think would be impossible to spoil. Even if you haven't seen it, you already know the twist. It's sort of the only thing people know this movie for. But there is a side to it you might not have thought of before. The movie takes place in the dystopian, far future world of New York, 2022. The planet has been reduced to an industrial wasteland too polluted for traditional agriculture. Only the richest of the rich can get their hands on actual meat and vegetables. As for everyone else, the government rations out a miracle food to the overpopulated masses: flavorless, seaweed-colored crackers called Soylent Green. By the end, the protagonist discovers that this food, one that almost everyone is dependent on, is made of highly processed human flesh. Up until that point, the government and the Soylent Corporation had worked hard to keep their secret from getting out. They'd been telling the public that Soylent Green is made of plankton, which the oceans are too polluted to produce. They assassinated anyone who learned the truth. That is, if the witness hadn't already killed themselves out of guilt. In Soylent Green, the cannibalism industry is very intentionally hidden from view. It's covered up so well, nobody even suspects what they're really eating, and knowing they don't have any good alternative food source, they're not particularly compelled to find out. The product is very intentionally made not to look like meat at all. It's dry and square. It's green. With the grisly bits out of sight, people are able to eat each other without ever even knowing it. If there were a cannibalism industry, it's easy to imagine that it would work this way, that it would be completely covered up. I mean, it might not be Soylent Green exactly, but real-life factory farms already do this. They're traumatic environments, both for the livestock and the humans who work there. That's not exactly a huge secret, but from what I gather, most people don't really think much about it. It's easier to imagine that all of that mechanized death isn't happening at all. Out of sight, out of mind. That part I pretty much get. What's harder for me to wrap my head around is how? How could such a large, exploitative industry just be swept under the rug? How could it operate on such a scale while remaining so efficient at what it does? There's an episode of the Magnus Archives podcast that I think does a really good job grappling with this question. In episode 30, Killing Floor, a former worker recounts his time in a slaughterhouse. Eventually, the work became too much for him, and he quit. He can't go back to work there again, he isn't allowed to. Apparently, the constant death has a way of desensitizing you. After working on the killing floor, you sort of start to see everything as meat. Even other human beings. They just start to look like more product, yet to be processed. He, understandably, didn't like that feeling and wanted to get away from it. But when he tried to leave, he found that he couldn't. The building seemed to stretch on infinitely, door after door, hallway after hallway, and all of it empty. Nobody there, not even the animals. He remembers running through the labyrinth, searching for a way out. At last, he finally ends up on the conveyor belt himself. As he nears the end of the line, he finds one of his coworkers waiting for him there like any other produce. Suddenly, he understands. Before the labyrinth will let him go, he has to butcher one final animal. It's the same thing he's done a million times. It's just a different kind of meat now. Right before he does, the man utters a single sentence, one that has stayed with the narrator ever since. You cannot stop the slaughter by closing the door. While the slaughterhouse he worked at mostly processed animal meat, I think this sentiment can also be applied to the idea of a cannibalism industry too. It could be packaged and covered up to the point where you don't have to think about the actual process at all. But that doesn't make it any less bloody. If the cannibalism industry did exist, perhaps it could hide itself well. And then, if you were participating in it, how would you ever know? Okay, prepare yourself. I'm about to show you some of the most graphic imagery I think we've ever shown and probably will ever show on this channel. I'll try my best to censor it where I can, but don't say I didn't warn you. Ready? This is the art of Barbara Daniels. As you can see, it turns the food chain on its head. Animals butchering, cooking, and consuming people, farm to table. Animals keeping pets, going on hunting trips, eating meat. And look who's in the fishbowl. Look who's on the plate. If you're feeling a bit bothered, a bit disturbed, well done. That's the point. To make you feel that dissonance. When humans do any of these things to animals, it's normal. You don't think too hard about that. But when it's done to people, the idea of human meat being prepared by a butcher or processed in a factory, it probably makes you a little queasy, doesn't it? In Soylent Green, everyone is kept in the dark, even the audience. Nobody knows how the sausage is made. That's not how it works in Daniel's art. Here, the door is wide open. Every step of the process is on graphic, brutal display. There's a lot of art like this, actually. I think of the whales harpooning humans in the music video for King Rat by Modest Mouse. I think of the stables full of feral, glassy-eyed humans from the manga Animal Human. I think of all the versions of Pigman butchers I've seen, never without a bucket of human limbs nearby. Despite the meat industry's efforts, it strikes me that humans are, by and large, obviously still very much aware of what's going on. So, why try to close the door at all? I mean, if the secret's already out, you might as well just leave it open. But could you do it? Could people ever just get used to the idea of a cannibalism industry? What would realistically need to happen for people to know what they're eating, who they're eating, and just be okay with it? In the book Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Basterica, the answer is surprisingly simple. What it really comes down to is language. The story takes place in a dystopian world where a virus has rendered all animals inedible. In a shockingly brief amount of time, human flesh becomes the only source of meat. It's far worse than that, actually. Not only does everyone accept cannibalism in this new world, most of them embrace it. Tender is the Flesh presents a truly horrifying vision of the world, one where humans are factory farmed, hunted on game reserves, and experimented on in laboratories. It's right out in the open, limbs and organs on display in butcher shop windows, human skins used to make leather goods. Slowly eating people alive has become a fashionable trend. They just don't call it cannibalism. They're not allowed to. After all, cannibalism is still taboo. It's barbaric. Everyone knows that. Nobody here eats human flesh. They're eating what they call special meat. It doesn't come from people, it comes from heads, the same word used to refer to individual cows in the meat industry. They don't miss pork or beef or chicken. Why would they? As the advertisements say, they're eating the same meat as always, but tastier. Words are a powerful tool. They're used to obscure the world, as the book puts it. Everybody knows exactly what they're complicit in, but as long as they use the right language, the right phrasing, they don't have to think about it. Mass-scale atrocities and injustices against fellow human beings are just another part of life in this world, part of your diet. The most fortunate among them, the ones running the slaughterhouses and laboratories and game reserves, try their best not to see it that way. They, quote, reaffirm their reality through words, silently admitting that they need euphemisms to sanitize the truth. Horrifically, the cannibalism industry in the story functions just fine in broad daylight. It doesn't need to be kept a secret. After all, if everyone already knows the slaughter is happening, then you don't have to engage in the futile effort of closing the door on it. You can do it right in plain sight, so long as it has the right packaging. In her own words, Nellie Lovett runs a nice, respectable business. Every day, crowds of people flock to her meat pie shop. Despite the impossible price of meat, Mrs. Lovett's baked goods have gone from the worst pies in London to an overnight sensation. And at this point, you know it wasn't because of her herbs and gravy. Mrs. Lovett serves the good people of London to each other. To pull this off, she's reached a, shall we say, business arrangement with her partner in crime, the murderous barber Sweeney Todd. He dispatches his own customers, and she gets rid of the evidence, all while turning a tidy profit. Lovett is careful to pick and choose strangers who won't be missed. She runs the bodies 3 times through the grinder, smoothly and carefully, to the point where they'll taste like anything. This whole scheme seems unquestionably evil, and it is. I'm not going to try to defend Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett. But what they're doing also isn't particularly extreme, at least not compared to what we see from everyone else in the musical. In the Great Black Pit of Victorian London, they fit right in. Mr. Fogg, the asylum director, abuses his patients and sells their hair to wig makers. Judge Turpin, the most powerful person in the play and one of the most powerful in the city, uses his status to hand out death sentences and get away with sexual assault. Lucy, one of his victims, bears the worst consequences of his actions. She goes mad as a result of her trauma and resorts to selling her own body on the streets to get by. In Sweeney Todd's London, cruelty, abuse, and suffering are just part of life. People not only accept it, they expect it. From the most respected functions of society to its underbelly, people understand that this is just how things work. Fogg runs a mental institution, Turpin decides the law, and Lucy?
She was only a half-crazed beggar woman. London's full of them.
The cannibalism industry operates so well in Sweeney Todd because it already existed. Long before anyone acquired a taste for flesh, human bodies were already commodified in this world, objectified, reduced to parts to be bought and sold. This society mandates that in order to climb the social ladder, you have to throw other people into the meat grinder. And that's exactly what Mrs. Lovett does. In a sense, she and Sweeney Todd are running a respectable business, one as respectable as a judge's or a doctor's. What they're doing is arguably just as exploitative and just as corrupt as the people at the very top. The difference is, they're the only ones willing to acknowledge it. Todd himself puts it best.
It's man devouring man, my dear, and who are we to deny it here?
A Modest Proposal, that piece from the beginning about eating babies, it wasn't some vision of a dystopian future. It wasn't a hyperbolic prediction of the worst possible outcome. It was a commentary on Jonathan Swift's own society, 18th century Ireland. As Princeton professor Louis Landa points out in his essay, A Modest Proposal and Populousness, the pamphlet was arguing against a common belief at the time that, quote, people are the riches of a nation. In other words, people were only considered to be as valuable as what they could contribute to the economy. Underneath the satire, the grotesque imagery, the dark humor, A Modest Proposal urged compassion for the poor, and for the readers to think of a real solution to help them. These cannibalism stories, as gory and grisly as they may be, aren't about meat. Not entirely. Ultimately, they seem to be about exploitation. They're about all the things people accept without question, what they're too comfortable to question, what they consume, whether the door to the killing floor is open or not. Cannibalism is taboo. It's shocking enough when one person does it, let alone an entire society. But if it were packaged well enough and everyone else did it, wouldn't you? As an outsider looking in at humanity, it's hard for me to think that the answer would be no for most of you. In a sense, everyone has their meat, some version of it. The uncomfortable truth is, it's hard to exist in this world without consuming something at someone else's expense. As long as the world works in the way that it does, it's pretty much impossible to avoid. We all eat flesh in some form or another. Even me, and I don't have a mouth. I don't think what these stories are asking of you is to consider whether you'll consume meat at all. I think what they're asking, ultimately, is whatever meat you do inevitably eat, are you sure you know where it came from? I can't tell you what decisions to make. I can't tell you what to think. Whether or not you consume meat, whatever that may mean, is up to you. But there is one thing I can tell you. Making informed decisions starts with education. If you do want to find out where your meat came from, whatever it is, you'll probably have to start by doing some research. The problem is, learning is hard. What do you do when you want to know more about the world, but you just don't have the time or the resources? Sometimes it feels like certain subjects just don't come naturally to you. For me, the fiction research stuff is easy enough, but I have a much harder time with things like math or science. Believe me, I realize the irony of a robot saying that. I just never really seem to be able to grasp those things. I just found reading and writing to be a lot easier. Recently, though, I feel like I'm finally starting to get it. For 10 minutes a day, every day that I feel like it, I've been taking algebra courses, and they're actually working, which is sort of weird because it's not like I'm taking lectures or quizzes or anything. It feels like I'm getting a legitimate, useful education without any of the exhausting parts I've come to expect. I'm actually kind of having fun with it, which is not something I ever expected to say about algebra. You might recognize some of the clips I've been showing here. They're all from an app called Brilliant, which is where I've been doing all this learning. I know you've probably heard about Brilliant a zillion times at this point, but honestly, there's a good reason for it. It's a really, really good program. It allows you to learn at any skill level, whether you're an expert or a beginner. You can go in and use it whenever you have a little spare time, even if it's just for 5 minutes a day. And it's not just math, either. Brilliant has courses on science, programming, logic, all the really hard stuff. To give it a try, visit brilliant.org/TaleFoundry or scan the QR code on screen. You can actually get started totally free. Then if you want to sign up and get unlimited daily access to everything Brilliant has to offer, you can use that same link to get 20% off an annual subscription. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to get started. Again, that's brilliant.org/TaleFoundry for 20% off an annual subscription. If you really want to understand what kind of meat you've been eating all this time, then I recommend starting by consuming a little knowledge first. And Brilliant is by far one of the best places to get your hands on it. I hope you'll give it a try. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next week. Bye!